All right, are we broadcasting? Am I good to go? Sorry, it's been 2 months, I forget myself. Okay, thank you. All right, welcome everybody to the Transportation Mobility Advisory Committee meeting, Tuesday, October 13th. Before we get started, I'm going to read this statement, and just as a review, this statement needs to be read in order to hold the meetings remotely, and it's about 2/3 of a page, so it takes a minute. All right, it is Tuesday, October 13th, and it is 12:33 p.m. This meeting will be conducted entirely via electronic means on August 4th, 2020, in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074. I determined that conducting meetings of the Provo City Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee with an anchor location, such as the Community Development Conference Room, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which I have made this determination. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to novel coronavirus disease 2019 since March 6, 2020, a disease outbreak which the World Health Organization has characterized as a pandemic. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. This spreads through respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, and it may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic. Federal, state, and local authorities have recommended that individuals limit public gatherings, wear face masks, and follow social distancing guidelines. The individuals exposed to persons experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-quarantine for 14 days, and the individuals experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-isolate to prevent and control the continuing spread of COVID-19. Notwithstanding that Utah generally and Utah County specifically have been moved to the low-risk yellow phase, reported COVID-19 cases in Utah County have more than doubled since May 31st, 2020. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the Community Development Conference Room. The meeting will be available to the public for live broadcast and on-demand viewing at youtube.com/user/Provo channel 17. Okay, thanks everyone. With that, we'll go ahead and do some quick introductions just of TMAC members, and I'll just introduce everyone just to make it easier. So I'm Clancy Black, TMAC chair. Looks like we've got Joy McMurray, who is vice chair. Hi, Joy. Dr. Mitsu Saito. Thanks, Dr. Saito. Dave Arnold. Thanks for being here, Dave. And looks like that's it for TMAC members. I'll also welcome Dave Shipley, representing the City Council today. Thanks for being here, Dave. And Laurie Urquiaga from Planning Commission. Thanks for being here, Laurie. And also welcome various city staff. Thanks everyone for joining us. Okay, I think we'll dive right into item number 1 then, presentation on 200 East Open Street proposal. Or sorry, is that the right item 1? There was an amended agenda. I just realized I'm not sure if okay, item 1.
Public Works.
Yeah, item 1, Public Works progress update for 200 East corridor.
Well, actually, I think that we had, I know that there's been back and forth on this.
Okay.
Mr. Skabeland, did you want to go first or did you want Public Works to go first? What did you think was best? And you're muted.
Either way, I'm not, as long as there's a conversation, I don't think it matters. I thought, I actually kind of prefer to go first, but I'll leave it up to you. You're in charge, Rob.
Yeah, Clancy, it's your meeting, so you choose, but I know.
Okay. Let's go ahead, Aaron Skabeland. We'll have you start, I guess, and then we'll have Public Works go after that.
Okay, great. Have you allowed me to share my screen?
I think Chris.
You should be able
You
to.
might need to do that.
Can you see it now?
It started to come up.
Yeah.
We'll try again.
Mhm.
Now, can
There you
see it?
go.
All right, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you to Community Development and to TMAC and to all those who have engaged with Bike Walk Provo in this conversation about 200 East. And I really appreciate taking some time to provide some feedback from the bicycling community, and particularly from members of the walking and Mazer neighborhoods. And from the walking neighborhood, if not already, we will be joined by Wayne Levitt, who's one of the vice chairs, also you, Glenn Wagenen, who's a planner for the Wasatch Regional Front Council, and then Rachel Whipple from the Mazer neighborhood. So they are welcome to interject at any point to provide that perspective. But in preparation for this presentation, I conferred with them and others in those neighborhoods to get their feedback. So I don't want to be accused of false advertising. So I'm going to really talk less about an open streets proposal and more about our ultimate vision for this street, this bicycle boulevard, or what you might call a neighborhood greenway. And as you'll see, we're still interested in turning this temporarily into an open street. But ultimately, our goal is not temporary changes, but permanent changes to the street. And the open streets proposal, as I think you'll sense, was always a means to an end of achieving that goal. So I'd like to talk for a few minutes using this PowerPoint about what we see has improved on 200 East, what remains a problem. And I'm really interested in hearing Public Works perspective as well on these points, and then recommended solutions. And I should say recommended because, we are not planners, we're not engineers, but we are users. We have been using 200 East on a daily basis, so I think we have some good ideas, but ultimately what is applied and what is done is up to those who are in charge of making our public streets safer and more welcoming for all users. To begin, but before I get into my presentation, I want to make an invitation to all the members of TMAC. So next week on Thursday at 2 p.m., we are going to hold one of our, what's becoming kind of an annual tradition, one of our Provo bicycle infrastructure tours. Some of you have participated in this in the past. I think Clancy has, Dave Shipley from the City Council has, and Rob Hunter from Public Works and Rob from Community Development will be joining us next week. But we want to open this up to any members of TMAC. You're and the Planning Commission. I noticed Joy is with us as well. You're in charge of making decisions of how we design and redesign our public streets. So I think you really need to gain the perspective of what it's like to experience these streets on a bicycle. We've arranged for a local vendor to provide electric assist bikes. So if you prefer to join the ride using one of those bikes, you're welcome to. I'll send an email through Rob or through Clancy with this information, and if you could respond by this Friday so I can know how many people we'll have with us, I'd appreciate that. It'll of course be masked and socially distanced as well, and it'll take about an hour. And we're planning to have a follow-up ride the following week, and we'll once we decide on the date and arrange for those bikes, we'll let you know. Okay.
Sounds good. And Aaron, if you could send that to Robert and Crystal, and they'll forward it to us, I think that'd be best.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And Clancy, do you want to endorse this ride since you've experienced it?
I actually don't know if I've been on the organized ride. I've been on all the roads you tour regularly on my own.
Okay.
So I will endorse the activity for sure. It's worth seeing on a bike if you have.
I know we've talked about you participating, so I hope you can join us this time. If you need to get an excuse to go get some fresh air on a beautiful fall day, this is your chance. All right. So I think it's important for us to agree on the desired outcome for 200 East. What is the ultimate vision? And I have a number of quotes. So anything that you see in quotes comes from a document commissioned by the city from a group of consultants. And this document is called the Provo 200 East, Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvements Design Guidance. And here is what this says. I'm going to take a moment to read these opening paragraphs. And I hope that we agree as a bicycling community, as neighborhoods, and as city officials, and as an advisory committee about what our ultimate vision is. Because if we don't agree on these things, we're not going to get there. So the importance of a low stress bicycling network, which is 200 East is a part of. So low stress bicycle facilities like bicycle boulevards, that is 200 East, shared use paths, think of the Provo River Trail, separated bike lanes, no longer the future Bulldog project, but the Cougar protected bike lanes, appeal to a more diverse cross-section of the public than conventional on-street paint-only facilities like bike lanes. So, for example, 700 North, 800 North, I'm sure you're familiar with these. The only separation between the bike lane and traffic is a line of paint, not much space at all. So facilities are considered low stress when they offered increased physical protection or separation from traffic. So think of the river trail and the protected bike lanes. Or in the case of bicycle boulevards like 200 East, or what we would like 200 East to be, when they are located on low volume, low speed streets, and or when they are supplemented with directional wayfinding signage that directs users to destinations and specific routes. Mm-hmm. And this continues with this. A majority of the public like to walk or ride bicycles, but are discouraged from doing so by perceived safety concerns, lack of facilities, or a lack of knowledge about where the appropriate facilities are located. Surveys nationally show that 50 to 60% of people say they would ride a bicycle more or start riding if they had access to facilities that provided more separation from traffic or were located on roads with lower traffic speeds and or traffic volumes. Additionally, evidence has shown that increasing the number of bicyclists on the road improves safety for everyone. So this is a win-win for all users of our public streets. Cities with high bicycling rates tend to have lower crash rates. Traffic calmed on-street facilities also create a better pedestrian experience by reducing traffic speeds, volumes, and possible turning conflicts. So I am going to assume that we agree that this is the ultimate outcome. This is the desired outcome. If that is not the case, then we need to have a discussion about that.
How does it reduce turning conflicts?
How does it reduce turning conflicts? So I'll give you an example of this for on 700 north and 200. Let's see, 700 north and 300 south. So watch for that when we get there. In some ways, at those particular intersections on 200 East, it completely eliminates turns. So there can be no conflicts if there are no left-hand turns. When we get to that point, if you still have a question about that, please let me know. Does that help? Okay. So let's talk about what has improved on 200 East. And I'm assuming some familiarity of the committee and everyone with 200 East. 200 East, it was identified as an ideal route from the front runner station at 6 South up to the BYU campus and 2 points in between. So that's why the bicycling community, the neighborhoods involved, and the city itself kind of came to a consensus that this was an ideal location for a bicycle boulevard, or we can alternatively call it a neighborhood greenway. So what's improved? What has happened over the last few years that has made this route so much better in some ways? So first off, the city over the last few years has installed these curb extensions. And on the left, you can see a photo of this is, I think, 400 North on 200 East. You can see a photo from 2007, and you can see a photo of what it looks like at the beginning of this year. So horizontal traffic, I can't read. Some of this stuff on the screen is getting in the way. Sorry. Let's see. So horizontal traffic curb extensions, I think it is, cause drivers to slow down by constricting the roadway space or by requiring careful maneuvering. So these curb extensions have narrowed the pedestrian crossings. And ideally, they should also reduce traffic speeds, particularly north and south on 200 North. So this has been a great improvement. And the city has installed maybe a half dozen of these from 600 North down to 100 South. Also, signs and pavement markings are the minimum treatments necessary to designate a street as a bicycle boulevard. So as you can see from that last photo, actually you can't, it's not evident, but as part of this project of building these curb extensions, the city also painted what are called Sharrow markers or shared lane markers on the street, and they also posted signs mid-block going north and south, indicating that bikes may take the full lane. And this has helped to achieve this recommendation made in the design guide. Then also, the guidance, design guidance recommended that a traffic circle or a mini roundabout be installed at 200 North on 200 East. And it provided some examples of what this might look like. This is what that intersection looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Okay. Other than these photos and a little bit of text on this particular page, the design guide didn't say much more about what this should look like. Also, the guidance that we received says that 200 East is great if we develop it in this way, but it really won't realize its potential unless we make it part of a wider network. And in the last few years, new lanes have been installed on 500 North and 600 South. And there were also existing lanes on Center Street, 700 North and 800 North. And we also have some new, lanes or another bicycle boulevard over on 800 East. But there are gaps between these routes and these new lanes. So it really needs to become part of a robust, interconnected network of bikeways. So what remains a problem? And I'm already kind of getting at that with those final comments. So let's take a look at target motor vehicle volumes. So ideally, these on a neighborhood greenway should range between 1,000 and 3,000 vehicles a day. I don't know what they are. I don't have this data, and I hope Public Works can shed some light on this. We're certain that, to answer that earlier question, or just to speak to that earlier question, we're certain that the traffic volumes have gone down, because on 3rd South, you can no longer make a left-hand turn when you're going west onto 200 East. And on 700 North, thanks to the UVX project, there is an intersection like this that also prevents not only left-hand turns, but also, as you can see from this photo on 300 South, it prevents through traffic. But in the middle, between 300 South and 700 North, you have 10 blocks that are largely unrestricted. And I suspect, and kind of anecdotal experience shows that traffic volumes there have not fallen all that much. And I'm hoping that Public Works can shed some light on this. And if they are too high still, what are we going to do? All right. Another goal of a neighborhood greenway is not only to decrease traffic volumes, but also to decrease traffic speeds. Ideally, the 85th percentile should be below 22 miles per hour. And the recommendation of the design guidelines is that the width of the streets between these curb extensions should be 20 feet. And if there were parking on both sides at this intersection, it could be 28 feet. These, the widths of the street here are actually 28 feet. So they're 8 feet wider than they need to be. That means that the lanes are 14 feet wide. So it should come as no surprise, and this data was provided to me by Jared Penrod nearly a year after these curb extensions went in, that the speed on this street has only decreased 1 mile per hour to 26 miles per hour, which means it's still faster than the posted speed of a road, a residential road. So we're not where we need to be. And it should come as no surprise that most people on bicycles, even experienced bicyclers, are not comfortable taking the lane when traffic speeds are this high. So something needs to be done to address this issue. And actually, I've already talked about this, that, despite the shared lane markings and the signs that say bikes may take the full lane, people on bikes, particularly of all ages and experience levels, still are not going to feel comfortable treating this street as a neighborhood greenway or a bicycle boulevard. So that's a problem that lingers. Also, the neighborhood traffic circle. So the lanes around that traffic circle are 22 feet wide. I don't know what the prescribed width is. That wasn't in the design guide. But anecdotally, from both the bicycling community and people in the neighborhood, we've been told again and again that that traffic circle feels dangerous. And just a few weeks ago, it was reported on the Walking Neighborhood Facebook page that there had been a car-to-car collision, and that one of the cars had gone over on its side. And auto traffic is very fast. We've been able to confirm that, especially, actually, this should say, especially east-west speeds are very high, and it's led to collisions. Sorry for that typo. So I like the fact, though, that there is a bicyclist in this photo that I captured from Google Maps. So people are riding, but at a certain peril of their life, well, their limb and perhaps their life even at sometimes. So once again, I've already kind of alluded to this. 200 East needs to be better connected to a wider bikeway network, particularly the connections up and around BYU to Cougar Boulevard and to Canyon Road need to be addressed. And this design guide also recommends lanes on 400 South and 200 North, East and West that would intersect with 200 East. And we'd like to see that addressed. All right, so let's get to the recommended solutions. Clancy, how am I doing on time?
Yeah, thanks for asking. If you could wrap up the next couple minutes, I think that'd be good. So we have plenty of time for public works presentation and discussion and the other agenda items. So yeah, if you could wrap up in a few minutes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, this will be quick. So, and I've kind of already alluded to some of these solutions already. So if traffic volumes, particularly in this center section between 300 South and 700 North, are too high, then we need to address that. And this design guidance recommends pinch points that could be implemented at certain intersections in that stretch, probably just one intersection. And it, in fact, says perhaps a optional partial closure at 500 North might be needed, because that is where much of the traffic is coming onto the street as it goes down that street. So here's some examples of different pinch points. These come in different forms. This would be a partial closure, as you can see. So bikes could enter or bikes could continue on the street in one direction, but cars would not be allowed to. They would in the other direction. Here's another. So that's an example of that. Also, the more serious problem that pinch points or chokers or neck downs would help to address is lowering the traffic speeds. It's 28 feet wide, 14-foot lane. I mean, who can blame people for going that fast when you have a 14-foot lane to drive in? That's kind of the speed that we're inducing by creating such wide roads there, wide widths there. So these come in various forms. So you could put in edge islands to further narrow the intersections, the width of the intersections. You could put in median islands, so another horizontal deflection, not on the side, but in the middle. But you could also install, do something really cheap It would be a little bit narrower, but you could install, you could put paint down and put bollards, in fact, partway through the intersection, so that cars can't make a really fast turn, so that the turning radii is increased, I guess. All right. In the meantime, and this is one thing that we've heard from the neighborhood, at the diagonal areas of the curb extensions, the city has posted some no parking signs so that people don't park in such a way that their car is sticking out, which in some ways might be a good thing because it narrows the road, but actually it decreases sight lines and makes things dangerous. So immediately the neighborhood would like this to be addressed. The city has posted some of these no parking signs at some of the intersections, but not all of them. Also, in terms of the traffic circle, it needs to be made wider, and we'd like the neighborhood once again would like reflective tape to be applied immediately. They say it's hard to see at night. Jared also told me soon after, well, many months after it was completed, that it wasn't sufficiently wide enough, and that he recognized that the cars were going through it much too fast, and that this would be addressed, but that never happened. Also, this will come as no surprise. We encourage the city to continue to build a wider bicycle network, add these lanes, connect it to Cooper, but also to add a wayfinding. The only wayfinding that really exists right now, and the only kind of branding or identification of this as a bikeway, are these signs here that Bike Walk Provo put up and were funded by the Utah County Health Department. So we'd like something more official like these signs that are recommended to be installed. And then 3 final requests. One is temporary, that is create and turn 200 East into an open street, make some temporary changes to it. We urge this to happen in the summer because we, with COVID-19, we recognize that people needed space to move around. There's not a lot of parks in the Joaquin neighborhood, and also students were going to be coming back, and they needed public space and also a safe space to move from campus and back. We wanted that to happen before the semester began. It hasn't, and we're almost to November now when the students will be leaving, and many of them will not be coming back. But if it can still happen, I think it would be great. But more important than these temporary changes are permanent changes, such as extending these improvements all the way through the Mazer neighborhood. Right now, they effectively stop at 100 South or 300 South, if you include the bicycle intersection. And we like them to be extended all the way to 600 South, so it connects with the bike lanes that go over to the front runner stations. And finally, we'd like discussions to begin between the city and BYU to collaboratively address the 800 North intersection. And this is what the design guide, and actually the 2013 bicycle master plan envisions for this intersection. There is a lot more north-south foot traffic and bike traffic going across 800 North here than there is automobile traffic. So we should design an intersection that prioritizes that kind of traffic, and that should be a collaborative project between BYU and Provo City. So I apologize, I accidentally turned off my volume, and if anybody interjected with any questions or comments earlier, I wasn't able to hear you. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I've got one quick question, and then I think we'll go to Public Works presentation before we have broad discussion.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You said convert it to an open street. Could you quickly define what you mean by an open street?
Okay, so I should have prepared some images to show you, but throughout the United States, and actually throughout the world, particularly during the pandemic, cities have recognized that people needed a space to move around safely. So they have temporarily closed, or I would say opened, and that's often the language that is used, many streets. And in Salt Lake, initially they closed, as you can see from this website, all of these streets, and they call these stay safe, stay active streets. And they began this in April. And some of these street openings were so popular that they continued to be open. There were up until August 14th, there were 4 or 5 that were still open, and as of today, there are just 2. So these are what you basically do is you temporarily restrict automobile traffic to just local traffic, and this makes the street safe and be able to be used to move around and play in, and run and bike in and walk in for people in the neighborhood and beyond. So basically putting up barricades at each end, putting up some signage, indicating that it's an open street and that it's restricted to local automobile traffic only. And these have been a huge success in many cities and have engendered greater support for making permanent changes like the ones that we are proposing.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Clancy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It looks like Robert posted a link that we all can look at later if we're able. Okay, let's go ahead and have Public Works presentation now. Then progress update on 200 East Corridor, and then have some more broad discussion on this topic with the committee.
All right. Well, thanks, Aaron, for your presentation. Some of my presentation, actually, Aaron went through and gave a good update on where we're at with things. So some of mine I can go faster, and we'll just kind of put some finishing touches on where we're at right now on 200 East. If I can. Clancy, I'm assuming it's you. Maybe it's you, Robert. If somebody can allow me to share my screen, I can pull up.
Crystal will be able to do that in just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, try it now.
It still shows host as disabled. Screen sharing on my end.
Crystal, Rob is on here twice.
Oh, sorry if you have to.
It looks like he just accidentally muted himself.
Okay, try it now. Both of them, your co-host on both of them now.
We can see it now, Rob, but you're muted.
Oh, there we go. I did accidentally hit the mute button on my phone. Okay. So I'll just go through quickly here and kind of touch on some of the things that Aaron brought up. But just starting at the north end of where we're at, we did use the document that was produced in 2013, 2014 as part of the bicycle master plan. There was a more detailed plan put together for 200 East for the bicycle boulevard, and we've been following that plan. One of the things that we, brought to TMAC a few years ago before we started with the improvements that we did make in 2017 was we could work towards narrowing the street, right? This is or doing improvements along the entire block. This is a local street meant for a bicycle boulevard. We can move the curb and gutter. A lot of the curb and gutter along here is our trough curb and gutter, some sort of trough curb and gutter that was done 50 years ago for irrigation when there was irrigation throughout the city that was put down the gutters. So we could redo that. We could narrow the street, add to the green space. But the thing that we brought up at that point is budget-wise, we could get a lot more done, a lot bigger bang for the buck in terms of getting the traffic calming measures in, the bulb outs at the intersections, if we focused on the intersections. If we do the entire block, so for example, we had, I think, 1.2 million in CDBG funds when we went through in 2017 and did the improvements then on the north half of this bicycle boulevard. Our rough estimate was that because of right now that the drainage especially is taken care of through these deep trough gutters. And if we were to redo it, we'd really need to bring it up to current standards. We'd have to replace all that, which would require us putting in a substantial amount of storm drain. And so the rough estimate, without having a final design, the rough estimate was that we could probably only do one block at a time for $1 million a piece, or for the 1.2 million, we could focus just at the intersections. We could continue on a temporary basis, which is what we did. The way that it's set up right now with the deep trough curb and gutter, connected by pipes through the intersection, underneath the intersections. But if we were to redo the entire street, we'd be looking to our other utilities such as sewer and water, and we need to plan with them. It would affect more than just the street, I guess is what I'm getting to. We'd have to plan with them because as we redid an entire street, we wouldn't want to redo the entire street if 5 or 10 years later, water needed to come through and tear it up to replace the water line. A lot of the infrastructure in this area is older, and so redoing entire blocks would take, I guess, would be affecting much more than just the transportation budget. So the answer that we got back was to focus at the intersections, and so that's what I'm going to go through. That's why the decision was made. That's the discussion that we had here at TMAC, and that was the decision that was made, is to focus on the intersections. On 800 North, the status is there is not something there right now. The long-term transportation plan, I guess the plan for 800 North is to widen it out to be the arterial that it has been planned for a long time. Right now, especially, this is the major choke point is right here at the intersection. And so to be able to make that happen, it's we really need to figure out what the long-term plan is for 800 North before.
So we have the long-term, Rob, we have the long-term plan for 800 North. And I want to bring this up because on 800 North, we milled and overlaid the road this year. One of the things that we did do is remove substantial amount of parking in favor of bike facilities, adding a 3-lane road section. So the master plan calls out, the recently adopted calls out a 3-lane road section from University Avenue up to 9th East. We continue to follow that plan. By doing that, we've eliminated a lot of parking in order to accommodate that. That'll allow us, as we've had discussions, I know Aaron had mentioned, that we need to start having discussions with BYU. We have had and are continuing to have discussions with BYU, specifically pedestrian safety along 8th North with improvements for both bicycles and pedestrians on crossing 8th North. Whether that's through, this is agreed a major pedestrian bike facility in this area. So we are having the discussions. We've had discussions with BYU on this particular intersection, 8th North, 2nd East, on trying to get a dialogue and understanding with BYU that we need to look at improving this intersection. And what that's going to require is some coordination with BYU and some of the things that are going to need to happen with that in order for us to get these facilities in. This intersection, to make those recommended improvements, those kind of things, in order to meet the master plan and also the intent of this 200 East, it will be a substantial cost. And so, as Rob mentioned, a part of the 200 East bike improvement, what we presented to TMAC, to the neighborhood when we were with Mayor Curtis, is to focus on what the most that they felt we could do with the $1.2 million. And that's what we focused on. So this one is still in dialogue and still is going to take some substantial amount of coordination with BYU, the surrounding property owners, in order to accommodate kind of this plan.
And I guess I misspoke when I said the long-term plan for 800 North. I guess what I meant is finalize what the exact alignment and the long-term plan for this intersection on 800 North, to figure out, the layout of it, to where we can figure out what we can do to enhance bicycle safety. So that's on hold right now, until we can have those bigger discussions with BYU. 700 North. The recommendation was to put in no left turn lanes. This addresses what you were talking about, David. No left turns. There's a median that only allows bikes to go through, does not allow vehicular left turn traffic. And this is a signalized intersection, so that is complete. 600 North, did not have any particular recommendation in terms of it's a local to local, so it didn't have a roundabout, didn't have signalized intersection, and so we put in the bulb outs. We changed the stop signs to stop 600 North and allow continuous traffic or bicycle traffic here on 200 East. On 500 North, it is also a signalized intersection. This does allow left turns, but it is a fully signalized intersection. And I apologize right here. I should have, this answers one of your questions, Aaron. This should say at 500 North. I copied it over without changing that name. But here at 500 North, we did a study last month, and the average daily traffic was around 2,000 here on the north end. And we had an 85th percentile speed of about 28 miles per hour. So we're hitting the target. If you guys recall, the target for ADT was 1,000 to 3,000. The target 85th percentile speed was 22 miles an hour. So we're in the spot where the report recommended we should be for ADT. We need to bring speed down, which is one of the things that Aaron talked about. 400 North is the same thing as 600 North. Switch the intersection to stop 400 North instead of 200 East, and put in the bulb outs. And I'll talk about that here. One of the things that you had addressed, Aaron, is the report had recommended that we could go down to a 20-foot pavement width. At the time, our bulb out details were 28 feet at the at the choke point of the bulb out. They are now at 24 feet. I don't know who all wants to have additional discussion on that. I was not here at the time those were, but my understanding is that there was a substantial amount of feedback on exactly how far down we wanted to.
Yeah. So Rob, there's adopted city standards. So that is adopted per street sections, bulb out sections, and our standard details in the city. Those are adopted by the council. We follow those, what is adopted and what is approved. We don't deviate those and come up with our own ideas on what that should be. We follow what the adopted plan is, as far as bulb out, those kind of specific design elements.
Is it 24 feet now, though?
It is. That was one of the recent changes that we made with the master plan update. We've actually decreased local street widths. We've actually changed our bulb out designs to narrow those down to 24 feet instead of the 28 feet. So there has been some changes since then. But at this time, the design was based on what the current adopted standard is. Well,
And
let's say was.
And
At the time,
I'll
yeah.
have to go through and see my recollection at the time, and I was on a different team, but my recollection was that some of these were done with 28 feet. I think we had already started to anticipating the adoption of the 24 foot. I think some of these are 24, but I'd have to go out and design or and measure. But any of the ones that we do going forward on these local streets would be choked down to a 24 foot pavement.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents here on the topic. I don't know 24 or 20, but I do think it is really good that it was reduced from 28. I ride 200 East at least once a week or more, and the first time I rode it, my initial reaction was like, oh, these should be narrower. So I think that's good that the standard's already been reduced. And so I appreciate that. I think that was a good move for everyone.
At 300 North, we've got same thing as at 400 and 600. It's the stop signs were switched to stop 300 North traffic and allow continuous traffic on 200 East. 200 North is this traffic circle there. So for a full-on roundabout, which is a much bigger, more substantial item, there is a lot of there are standards to follow for these neighborhood traffic circles. It was the city's, I believe, first neighborhood traffic circle, and as Aaron had already alluded to or mentioned, we recognize that these probably need to be more substantial. So going forward, we would make these more substantial, choke this down a little bit more. I still, so this was brought up just a week or two ago, and I need to see exactly on these. Like I said, that the design recommendations are pretty set for full-on roundabouts, but just to see what the minimum lane width that we could put through here with these type of turns and still get trucks through. But then we took it down as much as we could.
What we choked that down to is because Second North is a collector street. What that was is we still needed to allow bus type or school buses. So the design vehicle turn movement to make that movement was the bus. Our typical design vehicle is much bigger than that, but it was designed, the circle was based on a bus. And so to accommodate a left turn movement for a bus, that's how that was sized.
In order to improve the safety in the short term, could we stripe it and make it bigger visually on the pavement?
Sure. I mean, and that's one of the things, absolutely, from a pavement marking standpoint. Sure.
At least it might slow some of the cars down. It does look unsafe for cars.
And that's one of the challenges with the traffic circle itself. My experience, well, I'll leave it where it is.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean, if I can see you designed it for big vehicles, but it just feels unsafe. It's like not having stop signs opposing traffic cars and they're going too fast. So if you could prioritize getting it striped on the pavement, that might slow the car traffic down. I don't know.
What you're asking though is to stripe that as a roundabout, right?
Yes, right.
And that
just
is
make it visually bigger.
We can look into that, but just understand from that's a roundabout. This is not a necessary traffic circle. One of the things I agree with too is the nighttime visual. I think that's something, as in the city, this is again the first one as I know of its kind in maybe there is in Utah. I'm not sure where else there are in Utah, but this is one of the only ones I know about. So this is something where we're still trying to figure out the right sizing based on the condition, as what is meant for that facility. So that's one we're still experimenting a little bit with.
One of the things that we can go out and do is this was striped with the yield arrows before we get to it, but we can go out and that I think would bring a better visualization to everything and let people know they need to slow down through here is to stripe out the crosswalks here. That's an easy addition. So that's 200 north. 100 north. The original plan was to put the bulb outs like the other local to local connections, but that was we took that out. Derek took that out partway through the project because as we were moving towards the transportation master, or moving along in the transportation master plan, one of the things that became a focus was taking cars off of Center Street. And so the decision was made that 100 North will become the arterial, and to go through so that the downtown full pedestrian mall is from 100 East down to 500 West, and this 200 East to 100 East to 200 East is the transition zone. And so to get all the way out around that, the arterial is going to have to come down here to 200 East to meet up with Center Street.
And I can tell you, I've met recently with some council members right now, and we're having discussions about Center Street and kind of the overall vision. One of the visions that is kind of being brought to our attention from the council is they do feel that we need to divert traffic from downtown Center Street over to First North. And this is one of their as we've let them know, in order to do this, and I think they're starting to see that, is in order for us to do that, something needs to happen between Center Street and 100 North along 200 East. So that discussion will start to happen, is going to start happening. Those discussions are going to be brought to TMAC, to the committee, and have that dialogue on best ways. And I think TMAC has even brought this up before. Clancy, you've mentioned it, and those kind of things is how can we start progressing down that path? Just letting you know, we are starting to progress down that.
David Arnold, you probably remember we talked about downtown Provo and what it should be. And one of the discussions was, and we probably ought to find it and send it back out to TMAC, but TMAC at the time said we wanted downtown Provo to be a destination and Center Street to be a destination location and not a pass through and for commuters. And if that's what it's going to be, one of the issues came up is, okay, what do you do with all the traffic on Center Street? And part of that conversation was, okay, you need to move it to 100 North, which by moving traffic through the downtown area, if we are going to do that to Center Street, by making that decision, we're pretty much making the decision that 200 East and 100 North will be an important part of that moving traffic off Center Street. And so I think that's an important thing for TMAC to remember. And as Shane said, discussions have been going on with various council members to talk about Center Street and what's going to happen there. But if you pick up the one end of the stick on Center Street to make it a pedestrian-oriented destination, you're picking up the other end of the street of moving traffic to 100 North.
Yep. And the reason Gary and I bring this up, because the two, as we talk, there's the Provo 200 East, the bicycle and pedestrian improvements, this design guide that we have, that we in Public Works have followed, and Rob is going through to show you. This would be a change to that plan, and we've kind of let the council member know this would be a change to that plan.
I wanted to add that I welcome this discussion about this very important intersection on 100 North and 200 East, because it does tie into everything we've been talking about Center Street. And but we'll have to be really wise in designing that intersection to accommodate both the bike boulevard traffic and we want to make it easy for cars to go there so that they won't choose to take Center Street. So I am excited to continue that discussion in the future.
Yeah, I want to second that, Joy, and I'm actually going to share my screen for a second. Rob, I think you can keep sharing. Oh no, Crystal, could you give me permission to share for a second?
I'll stop sharing here.
You should be able to, Clancy, but let me make sure. There you go.
There we go. I want to share just a concept to keep in mind. Do you all see that Google map now?
Yes.
So this is an American fork. All of you have probably been through this. I think we need to give serious thought to not just a signal at 100 North, but something more like this.
And Clancy, that's absolutely kind of some of the design. I mean, just higher level discussion ideas that we're having with the council.
Good. Excellent.
I think what we've got from there is kind of the initial phase or the initial take from the few council members that we've had discussions with is right now we'd like to see somehow to get traffic, you know, from that commuter traffic from Center Street over to First North.
Excellent.
These ideas right here would be some of, we had the state, we had UDOT was there, letting, you know, from their perspective of being involved that, yeah, we're talking about discussions of changing the 500 West Center Street intersection. That would be looking at some change to a you know, turn movement changes and those kind of things at that. So we're starting that dialogue, but we want to start through the appropriate process, through the council, through TMAC, through the public, all, you know, the appropriate process to make those, implement those changes.
Okay.
The challenge,
great. And it sounds
the challenge will be all of the property that we're going to have to buy and tear buildings down in order to get that radius.
Well, and that's some of the things that we will go through as we start this process. We're talking signal timing changes, you know, various ideas are being brought out there. From our perspective, you know, Public Works, community and developments, we wanted to gauge what the overall vision is, kind of the stage path. And we're trying to get that from the council to see which kind of direction they would like to see this head.
Yeah. I think the one thing this highlights for me, I get all of that and I agree with all of that. But I agree with Aaron, this kind of messes up our bicycle connection to the front runner. So as we do this, let's not forget that we've got to connect, because we built this 200 East to be a bicycle corridor, right?
Well,
and with a goal to get it connected to the front runner station. And so now we've
absolutely. And that's why we brought it up. As I said, the things that we do are going to have a direct impact of things that we've already done or plans that we already have in place. So there has to be that understanding. Right now, we just need to understand, maybe from the council's vision of Center Street, if that's the vision, that then if 100 North the version, then we can start developing plans, what the impacts are, what we need to do to accommodate other plans. 200 East would be part of, absolutely be part of that discussion.
Okay.
So
can you guys,
I think you're right on, Dave. And from my perspective, what we then need to consider on 200 East from Center to 100 North, I think we then need to consider the full 1.2 million per block treatment that Rob mentioned just for this block in order for it to accommodate the increased vehicle traffic and be safe for the neighborhood bikeway. It might need that full $1 million per block treatment to allow for that. And I think that would be a good decision for the city to do for that one block, especially.
can you guys remind me why we can't choose 100 East to be that commuter transition point between 100 North and Center Street, and then we could preserve our bike boulevard on 200 East? Why can't we use 100 East to be that little one block connector piece?
So there's some approved developments that are already happening on 100 East.
I think a big one right here, right?
Yep, a very substantial one that's already been approved and moving forward.
How about 400 East?
400 East is, and again, we've said you can start moving this back farther to the east if that is part of the discussion. That can happen.
But then you're in neighborhoods.
There it is, and that was brought
really
up to us through certain council members that if we do that, then we're impacting more neighborhoods.
You want to keep it on Center Street as much as possible. So those developments on 100 East, those are make it impossible to have that be a connector piece there, Shane?
Yes, based on the approved plans, yes. Can that still be part of the discussion? Absolutely, it can, absolutely. It's just right now what has been adopted on the master plan that was discussed as we've went through that 200 East is that reroute right now over to from 200 Center Street up 200 East over, then down 100 North. That is what has been adopted.
And I think this is a great example of trying to balance the competing interests that as a city, as a TMAC, as a council, you need to go through to get things done and make improvements. And there's always a cost benefit with whatever it is that we do, and trying to figure out what's the best way to go about it with the least impact to the most amount of people while getting the biggest benefit for the city overall. And these aren't easy decisions or problems to work through. And so we're excited to be able to work more in the future with TMAC, the council, to talk about Center Street, to talk about the Bike Boulevard. And Shane and I just wanted to make sure that this issue was on your radar.
Yes.
So that as we're talking about the Bike Boulevard on 200 East, which we've done a lot of really good things and got a lot of the low-hanging fruit, in a sense, of things that we can do. Now it just gets a little harder and tougher. And as we work in one area, it has impacts in other areas. So it's just kind of an introduction to the fun you get to have here in the next few months.
Yes, because Joy, we're going to be looking to you. These kind of comments. Well, can we use one underneath? Absolutely. If that's kind of the TMAC, we would like to go that direction. Absolutely. This is what it means.
We have plenty of width on Center Street. I mean, we could put the bicycle path there, but we'd have to get rid of the diagonal parking in the middle. Diagonal parking is a nightmare for bicyclists. But there is plenty of right-of-way on Center Street through this area. So that's something we can look at, as repurposing the type of traffic that goes up and down Center Street, and maybe pushing because the bicycle path to the front runner could go over and hit Second Freedom, right? Or First West, right? Yeah. And then right down to that footbridge and everything. So it'll be interesting to see as this unravels, or that's not the right word.
Well,
as it unfolds. Hopefully it doesn't unravel.
And one thing I want to help TMAC understand too is you got to look at this from a regional perspective, right? Downtown Center Street is, it makes this a destination. However, Center Street currently functions as a commuter thoroughfare, right? Based on the regional plan, and what happens with the road networks, especially on I-15, the study that's going on with I-15, interchange study. If there is an interchange put somewhere between Center Street and University Parkway, opening day, we're showing that roughly 6,000 cars come off of Center Street. Center Street, we're running about 18 to 22,000 cars a day. You can see how much is being used now. When we do that, it takes quite a substantial amount of traffic off Center Street. So understand that there's regional projects that really impact Center Street just beyond this tight macro level. So
I think it's worth noting, though, that the real problem with traffic on Center Street isn't the volumes. The volumes are not a problem. If that gives exposure to the businesses. The problem is the speed of that traffic. So I think we need to be careful about
again
shifting all the traffic to 100 North.
Again, that's some of the things that we've asked the council is what's important. A downtown Center Street typically is designated as a pedestrian type mall. One of the priorities that we've heard is we want this to be more pedestrian. We want this to be more pedestrian friendly. We want it to be designated for pedestrians. One of the, that. Right now, that would become at the expense of reducing vehicles, reducing those amount of vehicles, 18 to 22,000 cars in any pedestrian mall type setting, whether how you define that does not fit in that context, and not even close.
But I think the difference could be split between center and 100 north. Not shifting all of the traffic, but
And,
slowing
and,
down
they-
traffic.
I
and
think
Aaron,
that's generally
and
where we
again,
want, yeah.
and again, that's part of the discussion that we're trying to have. That's the division. That's the vision that we're trying to, as Public Works, to say, what is that vision? What are the objectives? If that is one of the objectives that get determined, as we discuss this, is we still want some vehicle use, but on center, but how much and how can we do that? We've asked that, we as Public Works have asked, help us define those objectives, what that is, so that we can start then putting concepts, ideas together to meet those objectives.
And if we were to do that, kind of split the difference, I think most of that traffic on 100 north would either turn left or right onto University Avenue. And, we don't have to have it go all the way to 200 east. So I think there's ways to finesse this.
Possibly. Again, like I said, University Avenue, left turns are all cut off at University Avenue. The pedestrian mall is defined to 100 east, and then the transition area.
We need to be very careful with our east to west corridors. We're already kind of suffering there.
Yeah, we've got to maintain those.
Absolutely.
But I think we can find solutions that meet all needs. I mean, in the scenario I kind of presented, where this is more of a forced turn, if we give the additional treatments on this block so bicycles feel safe and only bicycles can proceed directly north, all of a sudden you've improved east-west mobility and you've cut off traffic.
That's actually absolutely, Clancy, where that becomes a free left, right? We start to be a signal and we become a free left, and we start
both problems.
We can start looking at those options. Right now, we're not proposing anything to say this is the right idea, right? What we're looking for is help us define the objectives.
Yeah.
Okay, I had a question for Rob. We'll probably solve the Center Street problem for a few years. When you looked at the speed on 200 East, were you looking mid-block at intersection? I'm just wondering, is it slowing down in the intersections and then speeding up mid-block? Do you have any idea? Where were the test locations? Were they mid-block when you tested the
tests? So the tests are at mid-block.
They're at mid-block.
Yeah, they're more towards the mid-block, and the reason for that is typically at intersections they're a lot slower through intersections, where mid-block, between intersections is where you get your highest speeds.
So are we not going to get the speed down till we narrow the road?
Well, the objective on those is, 22 is the 85th percentile.
Well, that's my point. Are we, by just treating the intersections, are we going to get it down mid-block, or do we really have to put the road on a diet?
Again, in any situation where you have a speed set as 25 miles an hour, but your 85th percentile objective is 22 miles an hour, there's an issue there. Right. Yeah, because anytime we set speed, that's what we set speed off of, is the 85th percentile. I can go in any part of the city, in all the part of the city, and I can tell you most anywhere you're going to have the posted speed, and we're going to be anywhere between the posted speed and 5 miles an hour, 5 to 6 miles an hour over that posted speed.
Is there any way we could temporarily narrow the street to find out what it does to the speed?
And
I'm afraid we could throw a bunch of money at the intersections and it's still not going to take the speed down.
So had that. So again, we've had this discussions. We had this back with Mayor Curtis. One of the things, and as Rob went through this, and we want the TMAC to understand, and we've actually had this discussion with the administration, with the mayor and Wayne. What we have been following is the adopted and approved the 200 East bicycle and pedestrian improvements. We have a limited budget. I know there's times where that people feel like Public Works, that we have this crazy budget to do the whole improvements. And as we've told people in the past, they have to be incremental. We'll do based on the funding that we have, we'll try to do the best improvements based on, discussions with TMAC based on this approved plan. We as in Public Works are not trying to go outside this plan. That's what has been through the appropriate process. This has been through the public process. This has been through the committees. This has been through city council. We're fine with if we're trying to say let's look at different measures. We're fine with that, absolutely. What we've been saying is that if that's the case, and if that's the direction that we want to head, then we need to open this document and those things back up as a corridor, as a whole corridor, to say, hey, we want changes to this plan and have it go back through that public process.
I'm just wondering if we could do an experiment for a few weeks or a month and put cones and move the parked cars over and make the street narrower and go out and test the speed again and see if the speed dropped before we go through and change and build expensive roads.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm just talking like an experiment. Just take a couple blocks, narrow them for a month, measure the speed and see if we got the speed down and see if that's the solution. Then when we go to plan in the future and do major improvements on the road, we know that what we're building will actually bring the speed down.
I think it'd be really interesting if we could do that.
We've actually done some experiments kind of like that when we were doing kind of a guerrilla tactic and we set up the hay bales in the street and everything. That was part of the way that we got the neighborhood on board for the improvements before they were made in 2017. Unfortunately, a lot of the residents along the street have been disappointed that it didn't live up to kind of what it was sold to be. Some things that we were hoping for were like more visually defined crosswalks as you're crossing 200 East and the other streets, things that visually set the street apart so that it looks narrower and safer and more friendly for the bicyclists and pedestrians. While the bulb outs have been good, we've had problems with parking. People don't know where they can park relative to those diagonals on the bulb outs in the absence of signs. And we've had people complaining about sightlines being obscured because of that. But some of the things that people really wanted that would help it as a user interface thing are visual, are paints, right? Better marking on the streets, better crosswalks and things like that. And I live right on 200 East and I ride it every day on my bike and half the time with my little kid who's riding up to Centennial Middle School.
And I think, Rachel, those are some great ideas. I think those things are easy for us to implement. I know Aaron had mentioned the wayfinding signs. Absolutely. I think those are easy for items that we can implement that are a part of this plan and fit into that plan and what has been approved as far as the treatments. Because for us, that's what we follow. We don't try to deviate dramatically in any fashion to say, oh, that's the wrong improvement that has been approved through the public process. We're willing to look at those things and say, absolutely, yeah, but that means we need to go back then through that process. If it's going to substantially deviate from this plan, then we need to go back through that process and say, hey, we need to we want these changes. These are what we're looking for.
That makes sense. Can you tell me why there haven't been any bicycle symbols painted on the street south of Center Street other than at the intersection at 300 South? Because once you pass Center Street, with the exception of that intersection, it's really hard to tell that whole area is meant to be part of the bicycle boulevard.
Yeah, and some of that is we can actually go out there and paint the sharrows. That's not an issue. One of the when we worked through this initially, we worked with the state in implementation of the signal, the Tuacon signal at 3rd South and 2nd East, and they're kind of going around the same time. What we told through TMAC that was previously and through the neighborhood is said, we're just going to focus on roughly from what we have funding wise, 300 South to 7th North. Really focus on from Center Street North really is really what the focus was, just based on the funding. Again, simple paint things we can do. One of the things that we didn't have was the improvements on 6 South. That's one of the things I actually want to bring up here, and some of the with the pedestrian bridge, and actually tying some of this stuff together, what we're doing on 2nd East, so we can see some of the bigger picture. Absolutely. I think that's something that we can start.
I don't want to take away from the presentation, but I would like to address something, Dave, that you talked about and Rachel touched on, which is, are there temporary things that we could do that are low cost before we do a lot of expensive investment?
Yes.
And I think that temporary approach, I know a lot of communities around the country do some things like that. That could be something in a future TMAC meeting that we could talk a little bit more about. Is there some sort of procedure or process where some of these ideas and things that come up, we could, in a systematic way to make sure they're safe, do some temporary or more temporary things out in the street to experiment a little before we pull the trigger and do lots of expensive improvements. I think that would be a discussion that's well worth the time for TMAC to have about what's the proper way to go about doing things like that, rather than just on a big ticket item that we've never done before, pulling the trigger and then finding out it didn't quite work. It should have been bigger, it should have been smaller, something like that. Dave, does that address your concerns?
Yes, it does.
Can someone tell me why we can't just reduce the speed limit? It seems unrealistic to hope for an average speed of 22 miles an hour when you have a 25 mile per hour speed limit.
I can tell you,
people don't look at the speed limit.
Absolutely.
The sign does very little to control
I can post
speed.
that at 10 miles an hour. People are going to still do 26 miles an hour.
Joy,
Yes.
people drive.
It's a great question, Joy, and it points to the importance of today's discussion, because the design determines the speed. The sign is secondary.
Joy, just in a nutshell, so you can understand, we all drive at a speed that we feel is safe, and that's our main regulator. And occasionally we glance at the speed limit signs or our speedometer, but mainly we drive based on what we feel is safe.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, but some of us do in fact look at speed limit signs and attempt to follow them. And it still seems like it might be a helpful piece of the equation to get a target speed limit of what you're hoping to get.
And that's why that's what we call the 85th percentile speed.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to put the temporary, speed monitoring one?
Yeah, so that, again, those are solutions and ideas. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have those on a few of our streets in the city.
Inexpensive way of telling you, right? Your speed is 27 miles per hour, and that's supposed to be 22 miles per hour.
Yeah, and we found those to be effective for a few months. After a while, when they become common, and they use the facilities, we slowly see the speed starting to come back up to what they normally have been.
Well,
so Joy,
how about like a European style one?
There's
a TV monitor there. Then take a picture, and then next there's the what do you call that? Not advertising sign. There's a sign.
The public shaming
is shown.
Shame people.
The public shaming. Yes.
Yeah, public shame. Some of the European countries.
So Joy, we can also use enforcement. We could ask the police to patrol it more and give more tickets, but it's always a temporary fix. It comes right back. So we really have to address, we really want it to be slow. We have to get the design that makes it so it's slow. I'm not saying that temporarily we couldn't go through and do enforcement or put up these different things, but they're not a long-term solution.
And it's a balance between cost and benefit, right? To get roads, really down to a certain speed can be from an engineering and implementation to do that can become somewhat costly.
So everybody, our time is running very short.
That's right.
I think we've identified some really important lessons learned on 200 East. I think there's general interest in some lower cost changes with paint, and a lot to discuss moving forward for 200 East and 100 North. For item 3, the pedestrian bridge, and item 4, the CDBG proposals. Can we cover those quickly? Are those items that can easily wait?
I want to bring this up because it has to do somewhat with 200 East, because
let's
a
go
lot of
for it and
times
cover those.
what we have is we do have limited funding. I can say for the improvements that everybody wants, that, you know, if feel from active transportation, from street, all those things. One of our help funding is CDBG. That's what helped funded 200 East. That is coming up again, the new funding cycle. We have a few projects that we're wanting to put in through that process. Can I share my screen real quick? Let's see. One of those, and that's going to be Aaron. Let's see. All right. Can you see my screen? Is the bridge. So right now we're in about 30% design of the bridge across UTA and the railroad. Right now, the bridge, that's the layout of the bridge. Right now you can see it also includes the future portion of the bridge across 6 South that would tie into that development. Right now, that is not part of the project. That would be something in the future that would tie in with that development, the mill race development. One of the issues that we have here is we have lack of facilities as far as sidewalk. The other thing is we have the adopted 100 West Street plan. You have reverse parking, and then you have the dedicated bike lanes. This is what has been adopted for 100 West Street. Right now, we don't have improvements with sidewalk. We don't have improvements with curb gutter. We don't have improvements, a lot of the stuff that really would help make this safe with the bridge, nor do we have the funding to install these improvements. This is right now I put together as a conceptual design. We have some issues with property owner with the startup crossing. I've had discussions with them in order to get the sidewalk in, this 8-foot walk all the way, missing piece of 8-foot sidewalk along 6 South. We're also looking at getting the improvements along 100 West on the west side of the road. Some curb and gutter improvements here along 6 South. In order to tie all this together, because the mill race projects, this is the first phase of the approved mill race project. So everything on this block that you see here, that is what is approved and they will be putting in. So we're going to be getting sidewalk improvements on the north side of 6 South and on the east side of 100 West, according to the adopted 100 West plan. So one of the projects we're looking at putting in for funding would be this, to get the pedestrian, the sidewalks, to help tie this together with the bridge that is anticipated to start construction next year.
Shane, has all the purple and all the red been approved on that block? Is that what you said?
This would be kind of the lay. This would be everything laid together somewhat as what has been approved. The design that would move forth. Again, the mill race project that's on this block, that has been approved. They will be starting construction when they move forward with that whole block. That is what they're building. What I don't have is the stuff on 6 South over here that's west of 100 West. And I won't have the improvements on the west side of 100 West. So we're trying to move forward with those improvements so that we can tie all this together. We can make this a safe, for use. Because 100 West, do you guys ever all know what the design is 100 West? Let me show you. Let me bring that. So the master downtown, let me bring up the downtown master streetscape plan.
So Shane, are you saying CDBG funds are proposed for that west side of 100 West only, and Mill Race is making all the improvements on their block?
Yes, they have already, that has been approved, and they will be constructing the west side.
Or the east side.
Sorry, the east side.
Okay.
So this is the 100 West Street from 6 South up to, 100 South. This is the approved typical section. So this is what's being followed. This is what we want to get here on the west side of the road. We want to start getting those facilities in so that we can start tying this together.
And those bike lanes are separated by paint only, correct?
So there's only a bike lane on the west side. There, yes, there's paint here on the bike lane. On the east side of the road, we'll have a bike, and then we have back in angled parking. So it's back in angled parking on the east side of the street. You know. And then we have we have a really wide sidewalk that's on the east side of the street, and then an 8-foot walk that's on the west side of the street.
What's back in 45?
Back in.
So that you pull forward and you back into it?
Yes. So you come in, you actually back in.
So does that eliminate the hazards with the bicycles?
That helps eliminate. That was always part of the discussion, is putting parking with bike lanes is an issue. To help with that, this is kind of what got determined from that, because it was determined parking was a priority for this area.
Okay.
And Shane, did you say we do have funding for the part of the bridge that goes over the tracks, but not for the part that goes over the street?
Yes, correct. So let me go back to the design. What we have is touching down here with the elevator and the stairs. This is what will be constructed. This here, this is future. This portion here, some kind of pedestrian path over. That's the discussion.
That would probably only serve the residents of Millrace.
That's a discussion with Millrace. That's a discussion, and tying that all together.
So how do people get safely to the planned pedestrian and bike bridge?
That's what we're trying to implement with the CDBG funds. Is we need to get this sidewalk in here from 2nd West and get that over to 100 West. The other improvements we want to get is up here to 5th North, to get those down so that they can get from the west side over here another direction coming down 100 West. But at the same time, this intersection, this piece right here, this crossing, is we want to start getting not just a painted crosswalk, but looking at other solutions, whether that's, flashing beacon, what that is, we haven't decided yet. That would be part of these funds, right?
So I don't see anything on the south side of the street, correct?
No, south side of the street, what we'll be doing is eliminating all the parking on the south side of the street. We don't want parking and to be distracting. That will be the bike lane. That'll be a dedicated bike facility all the way down 6 South. And similar to on the north side. What this does is it ties over to 2nd East. So this is supposed to tie over to 2nd East at 6 South, and tie that facility, that bike boulevard with UTA here, to getting a safe access to that transit facility. Because we do have issues crossing here at 2nd West.
Massive, right? Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that is part of an overall solutions. So what I'm saying is what is a higher priority to TMAC? Is it to continue the 200 East improvements, what is in this bicycle plan, which we're okay with? Or would it be this? This is one we're proposing, these improvements. The other one that we wanted to bring up that we've had is the Franklin neighborhood. Okay. This has been a neighborhood that I think they feel like they've been neglected. They are in the CDBG zone. We do have a lot of areas in the Franklin neighborhood that have missing sidewalk. That has we have a lot of complaints about broken sidewalk, difficult to walk, those kind of things here. So I brought up just an overlay quickly of the Franklin neighborhood. Can you see me?
We still see the ped bridge.
All right, let me bring that up. You're still seeing that? Share my screen. Let me new share. Here we go. So let me bring up Google Earth.
There you go.
Can you see that now?
Yep.
So these are a majority of some of the complaints, some of the areas in the Franklin neighborhood that we have been have relayed to us from Public Works, from the neighborhood, from the administration, of concerns with walkability. You can see some of the highlighted areas that we have. So we have some of these blue areas that I have on here, here. There's areas down through here. We've put cost estimates together because these are areas that don't have walk. There are some areas that we don't necessarily may not have right of way. These are areas that would be a priority for us to do to get the walkability areas. We've put cost estimates together to do all those areas in the blue based on needing to do utility relocations. We have power issues, we have water meter issues, we have communication issues. So there's a substantial amount of utility issues in order to get those areas in. Those areas right there, just those three areas, you're looking at about $700,000 to do those areas. What we want to do is kind of spread this out as much as we could get through the CDBG funds, and then leverage some of our funds that we have designated in Public Works for sidewalk, concrete improvements. We want to leverage some of the CDBG funds with our capital project, or it'd be our concrete improvement projects. We want to kind of tackle this neighborhood and try to do as much as we can with whatever funding that we can get. And that is kind of all these areas where we've had complaints, major complaints of sidewalk, because a lot of these areas are where we have large trees that have grown up, roots and stuff. And it's going to be more than just putting sidewalk, taking sidewalk out and put it back in. We're going to have to do some more substantial maintenance than those kind of activities. So that's our other CDBG project that we have wanted to bring to you and kind of gather your thoughts on what is the direction that TMAC would see. We have the 200 East project, I think, that Aaron has presented. We have the project down here at down at 6 South, 100 West, and then we have the Franklin neighborhood area. And so we wanted to present that to you and just get your thoughts.
So Shane, is there like only money for one of these, or?
Well, the CDBG is a selection process. So we go to the CDBG, and we go to them, we present. For us, we can present all three projects, all three projects. We can present whatever we want as what we want to do. Typically you're asked, well, what's the priority? What is the priority for, and that's where I'm asking you, what is the priority? Because that's how we would explain it to the CDBG committee, to say, hey, this is from the TMAC committee. This is, one of the priorities that they would like to see to be funded first, and how much that we could get. Because I think in the CDBG funds this cycle, there's roughly about 700,000 that's available. Now, not all that will be designated to these projects. They try to disseminate it amongst, other CDBG projects that are presenting, and try to do their best job of accommodating as much as they can.
So Shane, the blue lines, is that brand new sidewalk, or
that would be new sidewalk?
And
yes.
Is it all the blue lines, or just those three near the track?
It would be all the blue lines. Those are areas where we need to get sidewalk in, missing sidewalk, or we have very substantial sidewalk issues where we have to take that back out, because there is the other pink. These are just the blue areas where I've just put, because due to time, I'm not going to show you the estimates. Those are the areas we just put estimates together. These other red areas that are straight lines, those are other areas where we have missing sidewalk, other areas, similar walkability issues that we have in the neighborhood.
Actually, can I just jump in really quick, Clancy?
Yeah. Right.
I think that this is really excellent discussion, and maybe Shane, to kind of help the TMAC committee members, maybe if next time we could talk about the types of options that they can give feedback for, like how much each one would cost and how that could be divided and things like that.
Well, here's what we have, and I can tell you each one of these projects is going to cost more than what would be if we received all the CDBG funds, if that's
Right.
200 East, if that's 100 West and that, or if it's Franklin, all of these will cost more than what we could get from CDBG, right?
Right.
So, and that's the balancing act that we play is what is the priority? What is the feeling? Because these are all competing, not only just here in the city, this piece, but throughout the whole city is of areas where we have, walkability, the active transportation type issues
And
that
Shane,
we have.
do you need an answer today or?
No, this is, so the application is due, I think in December.
Okay.
And so you can maybe think about this a bit, and come up with your thoughts. Again, spreading out, like Rob said, spreading it out amongst 3, or 2. Yeah, that's an option. Realization then, there's going to be some give and take, not being able to do everything, is on one specific that may not, fit the need. And so sometimes when that happens, what we get back is, well, that doesn't work, right? Because we didn't invest the necessary funds just to make everything work, that we could. So again, it's a big give and take, but that's why I wanted to present this to TMAC and get your thoughts.
Well, I think, let's all share our thoughts, but I think it would be helpful next meeting to see a little more detailed breakdown. My personal thought is I love all these projects, but I think I would probably put the Franklin sidewalk first, simply because I've lived in neighborhoods where sidewalk is in significant disrepair, and it's such a small thing that can do a lot to build pride in a community and build the neighborhood. I also feel like getting funding for new sidewalk is more difficult than finding funding for some of these other projects. That's my general thought, but I wouldn't be opposed to using it for any of these.
Okay. Clancy, for what it's worth, I concur with your thinking on that. I think a neglected neighborhood ought to be at the top of the list and can build a sense of pride and also value in the neighborhood. So all of the projects, but I like Franklin #1.
Okay.
I think I would want to, this felt a little bit rushed to me, given all the things we've talked about today. And I would want to ask more questions to make sure I understood before I made that call. But clearly all 3 are important projects.
Okay.
Dave or Dr. Sider, you want to? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I would like to, I am concerned about the front runner. I agree with what you say about the Franklin neighborhood. It'll just not get done again. It's probably the front runner project because it'll probably get done some way, but we need to find a way to finish those streets. Building the bridge is not complete. We've got to get that bridge connected. Otherwise, we'll just have people walking on unsafe paths. It's not going to improve anything because we get them over, drop them down on the sidewalk, and then there's nowhere safe for them to go. So, Shane, we got to find a way to get the rest of that built.
I agree, and this is and I bring this to TMAC because I want you to understand the dilemma that we go in public works. There's this feeling that we have this substantial amount of funding to do all these projects. I am in the same boat. All of these projects are important. All of these have needs that are of importance to the city. But there has to be decisions made, and what are those decisions and what are the priorities? And oftentimes we get trying to give that perspective. And that's why I want to give that perspective to you to help you as TMAC to see this maybe as those that residents in the city to say, hey, this is what we value. This is what we want to see.
Yeah, so I think if we could talk through this more next meeting and maybe have a little more organized, more time and more organized list, that would be very helpful, because I agree with what you said, Joy. It'd be good to have more time information.
And those estimates would be helpful as well. If it's a possibility to break up the funding, we need to know what that looks like.
And that's okay. And I'm more than willing to do that. And I can give you those estimates. I can tell you though, to do any of these projects are going to be substantially more than we have funding for.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so again, we can break this up. And the problem is I can present whatever that is, total cost or an idea of total cost. It's going to exceed what that is. Then it becomes, we can break them up into smaller pieces. Sure. But then does it meet the need of what that area needs? Right.
Right. So are you recommending we pick one, or you're not recommending that?
I'm not recommending that we necessarily pick one. We were looking at going in this, really two projects would be since we've already kind of dedicated a lot of funding, the 1.2 million plus in some of city funds along Second East. And we've done some of the things there. I agree what we can do some more with some paint, some signing, some of the, low hanging fruit along that. I think that we can continue with. Some of these major other areas now maybe that are getting neglected, or we have something that coming in that really generates a need, such as the bridge. Those two and the Franklin neighborhood, because I agree this is a neighborhood that we do need to start looking at and making these improvements for that neighborhood. I think both of these for me are equal. And so I'm trying to help from a community for what is more important. Where would you like to see that funding? If we get that, where would you like to see that go?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shane.
And it goes back to on prioritization on active transportation, those kind of things, because this is a major, the one on 100 West, that is one of the major ones that is in the active transportation plan. In the recently adopted transportation master plan. That is one of the top priorities. Again, I want you to help some of these competing things that we have. This is only a small piece of the whole city where we have competing things throughout the whole that we're trying to deal with. Okay. So again, I'm fine to come back again. What is our November meeting? We'll start getting the applications for these projects put together. My idea was, again, to start just submit for these to the CDBG, not just submit one, but submit all three, but have a recommendation from TMAC on prioritization.
That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, let's include that next month then.
Okay.
Is there anything else that needs to be addressed today that can't wait for next meeting for any of these items?
Clancy,
Robert,
I just wanted to express gratitude to Mr. Scabelin for his presentation, and also Rob. Rob, I don't even know if you got to finish your presentation. You kind of got interrupted, but thank you for that. It was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today, and we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.